My name is Ethan Brooks, and right now I'm standing inside a workshop I built with my own hands. A warm little corner of Austin where guitars line the walls like old friends. The smell of cedar hangs in the air, and customers wait in a line that wraps past the front door. Some mornings, I still can't believe this place is mine. Because 4 years ago, the very idea of opening a guitar repair workshop and a small recording studio made my whole family burst into laughter. Not the nervous, confused kind of laughter. No, the sharp kind. The kind that slices right through your chest and settles somewhere deep, where it stings for a long time. Back then, I was the dreamy kid, the one who didn't follow the blueprint everyone else in my family lived by. My dad was a senior engineer, my mom worked at the University of Texas advising students on safe careers, and my sister Madison, well, she was practically the poster child of success. Top of her class, law school, high-rise office, polished confidence you could feel from across a room. And me? I loved music, guitars, the way an old instrument could tell a whole story just by the scratches on its body. I loved fixing things, bringing sound back to life. But to them, that wasn't a calling. It wasn't even a real hobby. It was a punchline. Before I go deeper, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. And seriously, has anyone ever laughed at your dreams? If this hits home already, hit that like button and subscribe so you won't miss the next chapters of this story. All right, back to that day. It was a Sunday afternoon at a family barbecue in Plano when I first told them my plan. I wanted to move to Austin, open a workshop, and start helping local musicians build their sound. I had spreadsheets, a business plan, cost breakdowns, everything. But before I could finish 2 sentences, my dad let out a loud snort, shaking his head like I just told the world's dumbest joke. My mom sighed into her iced tea and asked why I insisted on throwing my life away, and Madison, my golden child sister, rested her manicure on the table, looked straight at me and said, "Ethan, when this fantasy fails, I'll get you a desk job at my firm. Just try not to embarrass yourself first." Everyone laughed, out loud, at me, at my dream, right to my face. If you've ever felt that burn, the burn of being dismissed by the people who should believe in you the most, then stay with me, because the way things unfolded after that, let's just say the line outside my workshop isn't the only thing that will surprise you. I grew up in Plano, Texas, a place where lawns were trimmed sharp, report cards were framed on walls, and success was something you could measure, preferably in salary numbers and LinkedIn job titles. In the Brooks household, achievement wasn't just encouraged, it was the only acceptable language. My dad, Robert, spent his life designing microchips at Texas Instruments, a man who believed the world could be solved with formulas and careful planning. My mom, Linda, spent her days at UT Austin, helping other people's kids get into the right programs while quietly panicking that her own son wasn't following the script. And then there was Madison, 3 years older, effortlessly brilliant, the kind of kid who never smudged her homework or missed a deadline. When she got accepted into law school, my parents threw a backyard celebration bigger than most weddings. When she landed her first law firm internship, Dad grilled steaks like we'd won the Super Bowl. When I fixed my first guitar at 14, nobody even looked up from the dinner table. But it wasn't their silence that hurt the most. It was the constant comparison. At every holiday gathering, relatives would flock around Madison, asking about her latest cases or internships. Then they'd turn to me and ask, "So, Ethan, any real plans yet?" I learned early that my dreams made people uncomfortable. I saw it every time Dad found me restringing an old guitar in the garage. He'd stop in the doorway, fold his arms, and let out that disappointed sigh, the one that said, "I raised you better than this." Mom tried gentler tactics. She'd slide brochures under my door. Mechanical engineering, computer science, pre-law, business analytics. Sometimes she'd knock softly and say, "Honey, you're smart. Don't waste it on tinkering." I never argued. I didn't have it in me. I just kept my head down and hid my passion where they wouldn't look. Inside an old notebook filled with sketches of guitars, repair diagrams, wiring notes, and half-baked dreams. Once a week, I escaped to Old Town Music, a dusty little shop run by a retired blues musician named Hank. He taught me how to hear the difference between a guitar that was merely fixed and one that was alive again. Hank didn't care about GPA or resumes. He cared about sound, about soul. He'd say, "Kid, people like you don't choose music, it chooses you." Those afternoons kept me sane. They were the only place where I wasn't the disappointment of the Brooks family. Still, the pressure never stopped. At school, teachers praised Madison to my face. At home, every conversation circled back to practical majors and career security. During senior year, Dad sat me down for a talk. For him, that meant a lecture. He said, "Ethan, I'm not paying for college unless you pick something useful. No more of this guitar nonsense. The world doesn't need another starving artist." So I chose the compromise. Business administration. Not because it inspired me, but because it kept the peace. College felt like living someone else's life. I did fine on exams, smiled through group projects, and pretended to care about internships at consulting firms. But every time I passed a musician playing outside a coffee shop, something pulled at me, like a reminder of the person I'd left behind. Then came the worst part, watching Madison's success grow like wildfire. Big cases, bigger victories. Dad printed out her achievements and taped them on the refrigerator. My accomplishments? They got lost somewhere between tuition receipts and the trash bin. I don't think my family ever meant to break me. But that's the thing about harm. It doesn't need to be intentional to leave scars. Looking back, those years build something in me I didn't recognize at the time. A quiet, stubborn resilience. It grew every time someone dismissed me. Every time someone rolled their eyes at my dreams. Every time someone said I'd never make it. It grew in silence until the day everything finally snapped. By the time I turned 29, the weight of pretending finally became too much to carry. I had spent years doing everything right. The safe major, the respectable job, the polite nods during family dinners, while Madison updated everyone on promotions and partnerships. I clapped when she won awards. I smiled through being called the artistic one, which in my family was just a polite synonym for failure waiting to happen. But inside, I felt hollow, like a guitar missing all 6 strings. That year, I moved to Austin for a corporate operations job that paid the bills but strangled my soul. My apartment felt less like a home and more like a storage closet for a life I didn't want. And one night, while restringing my old Fender in the living room, something clicked. I realized I'd spent nearly a decade living for everyone but myself. So I made a decision, one that terrified me and thrilled me at the same time. I would open a guitar workshop and a small recording studio. Not a huge operation, just a space where musicians could come, rebuild their sound, and feel heard. I worked for months on a business plan. Startup costs, revenue projections, local demand, and Austin's thriving music scene. I researched zoning laws, priced out equipment, mapped out marketing strategies. I wanted to walk into the next Brooks family gathering prepared, armed even. And that was when I made the mistake of believing my family would listen. It was a warm Friday evening in Houston. We were seated at one of my dad's favorite restaurants, Houston Steakhouse, the kind of polished, wood-accented place where everyone talks a little too loudly about their careers. Madison had flown in from Dallas just to announce her firm had put her on track for junior partner. Mom and Dad were glowing with pride. I waited until dessert menus hit the table. I took a deep breath. My voice trembled, but my heart felt steady for the first time in years. Mom, Dad, Madison, I'm opening my own workshop in Austin. Guitar repairs, custom builds, a small recording studio. I've been working on the plan for months. I placed the neatly printed business plan on the table, sliding it forward like an offering. Dad squinted at me. "You're doing what?" Mom blinked as if I'd suddenly spoken in another language. Madison actually leaned back and laughed, an unrestrained, head-thrown-back laugh that turned several heads around us. "Ethan, you can't be serious," she said, wiping a tear from the corner of her eye. "A guitar shop, that's your big career move?" "It's not just a shop," I tried to explain. "There's a real market for this. Austin is—" Dad cut me off. "Austin is full of washouts who think music will pay the rent. Son, you're smart. Don't throw your life away." Mom tapped the table with her perfectly manicured nails, her voice soft but sharp. "Honey, you have a business degree. Why not use it on something respectable? You're not that kind of creative. Leave that to people who can afford to fail." Each word landed like a blow. I kept my shoulders square. I kept breathing. But then Madison reached across the table, picked up my business plan, flipped the first page without reading it, and let out a cold chuckle. "Let me guess. You'll fix guitars for broke musicians and record demos for kids who can't sing." My jaw tightened. "It's a legitimate business, Madison." She smirked. "Come on, be real. When this little fantasy collapses, and it will, I'll get you a desk job at my firm. You'll thank me later." Dad nodded like that settled the matter. Mom sipped her tea with an expression that said she pitied me more than she believed in me. Then the worst moment happened. All three of them laughed. Right there, at a dream I'd poured months into. At the only part of myself I'd ever truly loved. The waiter arrived to refill our water glasses, and even he paused, clearly unsure why three adults were mocking the fourth at full volume. Heat flooded my chest. My hands shook. I felt something old and wounded in me snap. "I'm doing it," I said quietly. "With or without your support." Dad waved his hand dismissively. Madison rolled her eyes. Mom murmured something about phases. But I stood up anyway, grabbed my keys, and walked out of that restaurant. Out of the noise, out of their expectations, out of a life where I was only ever a disappointment. I didn't know it then, but that was the moment my real life began. The night I walked out of Houston Steakhouse, I drove straight back to Austin with the windows down, letting the warm Texas air hit my face like a wake-up call. For the first time in years, the road felt open, mine. But freedom has a strange way of turning into fear once the adrenaline wears off. And by the time I pulled into my apartment complex, that fear had settled heavy in my stomach. Still, I pushed forward. I signed the lease on a small warehouse unit on the east side of Austin. Nothing fancy, just 700 square feet of cracked concrete floors, exposed pipes, and a roll-up garage door that screeched when you opened it. I told myself it had character. Really, it was all I could afford. I spent every dollar I'd saved from my corporate job on tools, wood, strings, amps, mics, anything that got me closer to opening day. I watched hours of YouTube videos on soundproofing because I couldn't afford a contractor. I slept on the floor some nights, using a guitar case as a pillow. But the one thing no one tells you is how lonely chasing a dream can be. During those first few months, I barely spoke to my family. Dad sent me a few articles titled, "Why Music Startups Fail." Mom texted long paragraphs about backup plans. Madison emailed me a job application link with the subject line, "Before it's too late." I ignored all of them, but each message still landed like a bruise. Then, the real trouble started. 2 weeks after I bought my main workbench, the building's old wiring gave out during a thunderstorm. A spark shot across one of the outlets, frying half my equipment. I sat there after the power died, the smell of burnt metal thick in the air, staring at tools I couldn't afford to replace. The repair bill wiped out what little I had left. Still, I kept going. I taught myself how to fix gear using salvaged parts. I dug through junk shops looking for used amps I could restore. I rebuilt everything, piece by piece. But customers didn't come. For the first month, the bell above my workshop door barely rang at all. Austin was overflowing with music shops, many bigger, cleaner, decades older. People didn't trust the guy in the tiny warehouse with a hand-painted sign and a face they didn't recognize. Some mornings, I'd arrive full of hope. By noon, I'd be sitting on the stool behind the counter, staring at the empty doorway like it owed me something. By evening, I'd sweep a floor that didn't need sweeping. Silence was the hardest sound of all. When rent came due the second month, I paid it out of my emergency fund. The third month, I put it on a credit card. The fourth, I had to call the landlord and ask for an extension. He sighed and said, "Son, passion don't pay bills. You know that, right?" Yeah, I knew. Then came the moment that almost broke me. I was in the middle of restringing a vintage acoustic when my phone buzzed. A notification from Madison. Against my better judgment, I opened it. She'd posted a photo outside my workshop. Arms crossed, sunglasses on, smirk sharp enough to cut glass. The caption read, "Supporting local dreams, even the unrealistic ones." Hundreds of her colleagues liked it. Some commented laughing emojis. The humiliation hit so fast, I had to sit down. My throat tightened, my hands shook. It felt like someone had reached into my chest and ripped something out. I blocked Madison. Then I blocked Mom. Then Dad. Then every group chat, every number, every thread. The silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was cavernous. I hit rock bottom 2 nights later. I had worked a 16-hour day repairing 3 guitars for half the price they were worth just to cover utilities. I was exhausted, sweaty, and emotionally numb. I sat on the workshop floor, back against the wall, staring at the ceiling as a single light flickered above me. My body felt heavy. My mind felt empty. And for the first time since I was a kid, I whispered into the dark. Maybe they were right. Maybe I was foolish. Maybe dreams really were for people born luckier than me. Maybe failure was my destiny, no matter how hard I fought. I closed my eyes, ready to accept defeat, not knowing that someone unexpected was about to walk back into my life and change everything. The day everything shifted wasn't dramatic. No lightning bolts, no sudden miracle. Just the sound of my workshop door creaking open on a slow Tuesday morning while I sat hunched over an invoice I couldn't pay. When I looked up, Jesse Ramirez stood in the doorway. Same messy curls, same easy grin, same calloused hands from years of playing guitar on tour. Back in college, Jesse was the kid every musician admired, the one who could turn a cheap pawn shop guitar into something that sounded like it belonged on a big stage. I hadn't seen him in almost 8 years. "Place looks lived in," he said, stepping over scattered cables and a half-finished pedal board. I forced a laugh. "That's a nice way of saying it looks like a disaster." He shrugged. "Man, I've recorded in worse, and I've slept in worse." I didn't have energy for small talk, but something about his presence felt grounding, steady, familiar. He unzipped a worn gig bag and pulled out a beat-up Strat with chipped paint and a cracked pickup. "Think you can fix her?" he asked. I took the guitar in my hands. It was old, scarred, and well-loved, kind of like how I felt inside. "I'll try," I said quietly. He watched me work for nearly an hour. I expected him to leave after a few minutes, but he stayed, leaning against the doorway, humming old riffs under his breath. When I finally got the guitar working again, his smile widened in a way I hadn't seen from anyone in months. "Damn, Ethan, you still got it." The words hit me harder than I expected. I'd forgotten what it felt like to have someone believe in me. We ended up talking for hours.
Jesse had left touring to move closer to his aging parents. He needed a place to teach lessons, maybe record a few demos. And I needed everything. By the time the sun started to set, he looked around the dusty room and said, "You know, this place could be something. Like, really be something." I almost laughed. "Jesse, I can barely keep the lights on." "Then let's fix that," he said simply. "Let me help." It wasn't pity. It wasn't charity. It was partnership. Honest and equal. The next morning, Jesse showed up early with coffee, a toolbox, and a list of changes we needed to make. We ripped out warped plywood, installed better lighting, repainted walls, and rearranged the space so it felt more like a studio and less like a storage shed. He taught me new techniques: how to refret vintage guitars without damaging the neck, how to tune amps to get cleaner tones, how to restore pedals that most people would have thrown away. In return, I taught him the business side: pricing, scheduling, branding. We balanced each other in a way that just worked. Word started spreading. Slowly at first. A local indie band came in on a recommendation. Jesse recorded them for cheap. They posted a TikTok praising our space. Then a singer-songwriter dropped off her vintage guild for repair. Then 2 more musicians came. Then 5. Within a month, the bell above the workshop door rang more often than it stayed silent. But the moment I knew things were changing came late one evening. I was sweeping up when Jesse tossed me his phone. A TikTok clip of me repairing a guitar had hit 50,000 views overnight. Comments poured in. "Bro's a wizard." "I need this guy in Austin." "Finally someone who respects old guitars." My chest tightened, but this time not from fear, from hope. Real, tangible hope. For months, I'd been carrying the weight of every laugh, every dismissive look, every cold comment from my family. But now, something else was growing stronger than that pain. Momentum. Small, steady, undeniable momentum. Jesse clapped me on the back and said, "Told you, man? This place has soul. People feel that." For the first time since starting this journey, I believed he might be right. I wasn't out of the woods, not yet, but I wasn't drowning anymore either. I was swimming, slowly, steadily, toward something bigger than the fear that once held me down. And deep down, I knew, if I kept going, if I kept pushing, if I kept believing, this dream might actually stand a chance. The rise didn't happen all at once. It came in waves, small at first, barely noticeable, then steady enough that even on my worst days, I could feel the current shifting beneath me. 2 months after Jesse joined me, our workshop finally sounded alive. Tools clinked, strings hummed, amps crackled with warm static. Musicians drifted in and out, leaving behind laughter, riffs, and the occasional half-finished coffee cup. Austin locals started calling us the little shop with big soul. Then came the real breakthrough. A local indie band, Blue Canyon Lights, recorded a live session in our studio and uploaded it online. The video caught fire, shared by influencers, local music blogs, even a few bigger Austin venues. Suddenly, we weren't just fixing guitars, we were shaping sound. Bands started booking studio time weeks in advance. Every musician who walked in left with someone else's recommendation. One Friday night, after an especially busy day, I stepped outside to lock up and saw something that made my breath catch. A line. An actual line of musicians waiting for their drop-off appointments the next morning. People were camping out. For us. I leaned against the doorframe, the warm air buzzing with city noise, and felt the kind of pride I'd almost given up on ever feeling. But the universe wasn't done. 2 weeks later, a representative from Lone Star Strings, one of the biggest guitar string manufacturers in Texas, walked into the shop. She'd heard about our restoration videos, our growing presence, and the distinct Austin tone musicians said we pulled from even the oldest guitars. She offered a collaboration, custom string sets under our workshop name. I nearly dropped the screwdriver in my hand. Jessie screamed louder than I did. But the moment that truly sealed everything, that carved itself into my memory, happened on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. The shop was packed, tools buzzing, amps ringing, voices overlapping. The air smelled like coffee and fresh sawdust. I was adjusting the intonation on a Telecaster when the bell above the door chimed. I looked up. Madison. Standing in a sharp blazer, hair tied back, holding a takeout cup like it was a shield. She scanned the crowded room with an unreadable expression. I'd heard through old college friends that she'd been pushed out of her firm after an expense report scandal. Her reputation had taken a hit, her social media had gone silent, and the perfect lawyer image had crumbled. I hadn't celebrated her downfall, but I hadn't lost sleep over it either. She walked toward me slowly, her heels tapping against the wood floor. "This place," she said, glancing around. "It's, busy." "Yeah, it is." A pause. Then the kind of smile that wasn't really a smile. "Well, I thought I'd stop by. Maybe talk." I waited. Calm, steady. No anger, no bitterness. Just clarity. "I'm working," I said simply. "We've got a full house." She blinked, surprised. I could see the frustration flicker across her face. She wasn't used to me having boundaries, having a life she couldn't belittle. Before she could respond, someone from the back shouted, "Ethan, we need you on this pickup change." I nodded, wiped my hands on a cloth, and walked away. No drama, no yelling, no grand speech. Just walking away. Choosing myself. Minutes later, I noticed Madison leave without saying goodbye. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel the urge to chase her. Didn't feel guilty. Didn't feel small. Instead, I felt something new. Something bright and full. Peace. And beneath that peace, the subtle, satisfying knowledge that I had built something real, something strong, something they had once called impossible. I didn't need revenge. My success was the answer.
People think the most satisfying part of rising from nothing is proving others wrong. But standing in my workshop months after Madison walked out, watching musicians tune their guitars and laugh with Jessie as amps buzzed warm in the background, I realized something surprising. The real victory wasn't that they had doubted me. It was that I no longer needed their approval. Success didn't erase the hurt, but it reframed it. It taught me that some people only know how to love you when you fit the version of you they created in their heads. And when you step outside that version, when you grow, when you dream, when you refuse to shrink, those same people don't know what to do with you anymore. My parents never apologized, not directly anyway. I received a short email from my mom months later. "Heard your business is doing well. Hope you're taking care of yourself." Dad sent a birthday message. 2 sentences, no mention of the shop, no mention of the years he laughed at the very thing that now paid my rent. Madison never reached out again. And strangely, that was okay. Some connections aren't meant to be repaired. Some distances protect you more than they hurt you. Life now feels full in ways I never expected. The shop hums with creative chaos. There's always someone testing a riff, someone arguing about pedals, someone laughing too loudly. Musicians bring me stories about their first gigs, their heartbreaks, their wins, and somehow my workshop became a place where people felt safe, not just to fix their instruments, but to breathe a little easier. And on quiet nights, when the last customer leaves and the lights dim to a gentle glow, I sit on the front step with Jesse, listening to the city's pulse. Austin feels alive. So do I. I think back to that kid in Plano, the one who hid his dreams in a notebook because no one believed in them. I wish I could tell him, "You're not wrong for wanting something different. You're not foolish. You're not weak. You're just not done yet." And to anyone listening now, anyone who's been laughed at, dismissed, underestimated, this part is for you. Success isn't revenge. It's freedom. The freedom to choose your people, your path, your purpose. The freedom to sit at your own table, one you built, one you earned, and finally feel like you belong. If this story hit home, drop a comment and tell me the dream someone once doubted, but you're chasing anyway. And don't forget to like and subscribe. More stories of underdogs rising are on the way.